Welcome back, everyone. We all know as Gen X kids, we played with toys that would make present-day parents, which some of them are us, and the older millennials, they'd faint in horror when they saw the toys that we had to play with when we were kids. I mean, these things, they were made out of metal, sharp edges, candy that you would choke on so easily. You know, things experts today would probably sue about and label criminal. Playthings of our era were not what they are today. There were no warning labels, no ingredients, no hazard notes, and the lawsuits that happen today did not happen back then. So let's take a look at some of those things that were hazardous toys, and yet we really enjoyed and were a lot of fun. Stick around. All right, number one, let's start with candied cigarettes. Okay, candied cigarettes. We all know there were the hard stick ones. They were called Popeyes. I think you might even be able to find them today. And they, other than the fact that they came in a square package like a cigarette, they didn't really look so much like cigarettes. They had a red end, so you put it in, it would look like a lit cherry. And then there were the other ones that came in an actual cigarette pack size package, packaged and done up with labeling that looked like brands of cigarettes. They were the same size, circumference and everything of a cigarette in a paper wrapper like a cigarette tube that you would take out, put in your mouth, and you could pop through it. There were all the little holes through it that would blow out this powdery sugar so it would look like smoke, like you were actually smoking your cigarette. And these things were gum and chewable after, and we would consume them like crazy. Not only that, but then you had the Big League Chew in the package, just like snuff in the big package, and you take it, and any kid that played ball, man, you wanted a big wad of Big League Chew in your mouth so you could sit out there and you could spit like the pros did. And can you say that, no, these cigarette candies, they weren't marketed to kids? Obviously. Now, this is something today that just would not fly. They try and do things on the sly, most definitely, like vaping flavors that are bubble gum and cherry and all that stuff. You got to tell me that that ain't aimed towards children. Straight and simple. Ain't nobody gonna deny that and be telling the truth. Now, these candy cigarettes, I mean, we had them, we enjoyed them, everybody went for them. They were a staple front and center when you walked in. I mean, sometimes they even had a display on the counter, just like they did with actual cigarettes. Now, who remembers this? Because I remember it clear as day going down. You not only get that, but then again, we were also the kids that could run down to the store and buy cigarettes for our parents without any worry. So what do you think of the candy cigarettes? You think that is something that absolutely, if someone had out today, they would throw a fit and they would sue your ass off? That is something that shouldn't be. Now, sticking to the food side of things when we were kids, and this is toys and things that we had with food, I want to talk about Easy Bake ovens. When they came out and they had the Easy Bake oven, and they came with what, I remember a little 40-watt bulb or something like that. And most dads would come along and they would sit there and they would Tim Taylor that sucker up, and they would stick that 100-watt bulb in there for you to cook that little tiny cake with in that little pan that would get so hot you'd reach in there and you'd hit the bulb with your hand and you'd get third-degree burns, and the cake would burn and the little oven would melt and it would almost turn into a radioactive zone, and they would have to come in and shut it down and be Chernobyl in your house. Now, I'm getting carried away here, but you know what I mean. Those things were nasty. They were dangerous, and people always ended up putting in a 100-watt bulb instead of that little 40 they had in them things to cook, and they were completely plastic with little tin plates. It was crazy. So that's for the food. Now, on to number two. Metal. Metal was a huge part of Toys of Everything when we grew up. It was made to last. It was made out of metal. I mean, who remembers the Tonka commercial from 1980 when they dropped the two trucks off the cliff? In fact, I'll play it for you right now and see, this sparks memories when you're a child sitting on the carpet in front of that little 21-inch TV with the twist dial knob and checking it out.
Let her go.
We took two of the world's toughest trucks and a 400-foot cliff. And this is the truck made by Tonka.
Now that I remember that. You remember that? Absolutely. That was a wild thing to see at the time. Like, you couldn't do much. I mean, we beat on them things. Those things were solid. They lasted forever. Most of mine lasted till I completely grew up. I had a full metal semi one. Was long. It was like 3 feet tractor trailer, solid metal and steel, and that thing lasted forever. Ever. It just did not break. It was an amazing little toy. Little plastic roll-up door in the back, which never made any sense to me because the semi-trailers themselves never had a roll-up door. They always the barn door that I always saw. But you had those. And then this would be here. This would be for the oldest of the Gen Xers because they were mainly in the 60s and some rolled into the 70s as well. But them flat razor blade roller skate attachments that you would tie to the bottom of your shoe so you could roller skate. Those things are metal, and if you fell and landed on that thing the wrong way, you could lose a foot. It'd slice right through you like an axe blade. Again, I'm taking a little license with the description on the injury, but I'm sure there were some severe injuries that come of them things. Shit, I remember one time, not with one of them, but we're playing baseball and I was wearing steel cleated shoes and I stepped on a kid's hand and drove 2 cleats through the back of his hand. And all they did was they decided that maybe he shouldn't stick his hand on the track, on the run track no more when he's trying to get you out, instead of me not wearing my steel cleats. So we had a lot of metal in all our toys when we were kids. Right? The great lawn darts. Remember lawn darts? The big metal lawn dart, and these things were heavy as like having a 3-pound steel arrow drive through your skull if you got hit. Like, how many of us got pissed off and actually like whipped one in anger? And probably near our friend or into a tree beside him or maybe into the side of the garage. When it comes to throwing toys, one thing that me and my friends like to play with in the garage is my dad never got rid of any of the saw blades off his circular saw, these old things. And these things, them 7.5-inch saw blades, those were great. If you grab them and threw them like a throwing star at the wall of the garage, that was phenomenal. I loved doing that. And the only time I ever got in shit for it is I threw one at the garage door just as my dad was coming in. And that was one of 3 whoopings of my life I received. 2 I got from my father, 1 I got from my grandfather, and the one from my grandfather meant more than anything ever. And that's a story I want to tell maybe on Friday for Feral Friday. Number 3, another food item, jawbreakers. And I'm not talking the little tiny jawbreakers they got now, no problem. You suck on them, they're gone in 2 minutes. But we had these big ass bastards the size of golf balls. And then they had the big ones the size of a little baseball. You remember them? They said that it was like the forever jawbreaker. You just lick it and you'd wrap it in plastic and you'd keep it for longer. These big things that you sit there and you have in your mouth and you could barely get it in your mouth and moving around. The fact that nobody actually died and choked to death on one of these in school or hang with your friends or run around outside playing while these things were in your mouth was a freaking miracle. And that's it. There's nothing else to say about the jawbreakers. I'm sure they cracked many a teeth, chipped many of the enamel off your teeth, and they were a cavity generator like you wouldn't believe. I'm sure dentists created the frickin' jawbreaker. Absolutely. Now, another toy that was staple for Gen X that everybody had. It incorporates a little bit of everything, but not only was it a toy, but it's actually a weapon and can be classed as a deadly weapon. And if a kid was running around with one today, they would probably get arrested, parents investigated, CPS involved. We all know that shit goes down today. Everybody is too crazy, but I'm talking slingshots. Slingshots. Everybody had a slingshot. It was just part of the toy box. You'd buy them all over the place, shoot your rocks, or they come in some of the little ball bearing. You'd get really good. You'd have the wrist brace to stabilize even better and get a better shot. These things were absolutely phenomenal, possibly deadly weapons. And every kid had one, and we shot them all over the place, and people got hit with them. We'd sometimes shoot them at each other, but we wouldn't use rocks or anything. We would take chunks of Play-Doh. Yeah, Play-Doh. You'd think because it's soft and everything, but when that decker comes, you roll in a ball and it comes out of a slingshot, that's still going to hurt like a son of a bitch. The only difference is we figured we wouldn't lose an eye, any teeth, or break a bone. Now, I have a story about a slingshot where I had mine with me, and there were these 3 other kids. They were brothers where I lived. And for some reason, I don't know how it started, but we got into like this rock fight thing where they were whipping rocks at me. And I was getting mad, and I told them to stop it and everything. And then I'd roughly, shoot my slingshot at them. I had that, and I'd keep them at a distance because I could shoot farther with it than they could throw a rock accurately. So I'm sitting there with this slingshot and everything, and they're getting me mad. And I picked out, and it just happened to have been my lucky, or as you could say, maybe unlucky day. But I found this perfectly round stone that was just great to load up in that thing. And I wound up at this kid. BJ was his name. Let loose with that rock. And all I see is it hit him smack dab in the center of the forehead. And he dropped straight to the ground. Not a sound, no crying, no nothing. He just hit the ground. He was out cold. I know you're talking, I'm a young kid. I'm like 10 years old. I thought I killed him. His brothers ran over. I ran up there. I thought I had killed him. And he had nowhere to be. This volcano-sized dent in his forehead where it instantly swelled up around, but where that thing hit him did not swell in the middle. And it was crazy. It was almost like it went in his skull the way it looked. Now, we were all really young. He was even younger than me, and the youngest, I think, was 7 at the time. And yeah, we flipped out. It was crazy. We lost our minds. We went back to his place. It turned out he was okay, and I eventually got my slingshot taken away, not because it was dangerous, but because I broke the rule and I actually shot somebody with it and at somebody with it. We did have rules. We were taught respect, and if you fucked around, you got your shit taken away. You got ass whoopings, and that's what happened with that. So that slingshot just disappeared. Never saw it again. Was never allowed another one. That was all part of the punishment, right? Now, another one I want to get to is I've talked about it before, and that's with the wooden seesaws, teeter-totters, and the swings that we had. Well, the one thing I didn't mention about them is the wood ones, right? These things, they were all treated, and not treated with some of the material they had today, but they were treated with like a deep creosote oil. Like it was thick and it was nasty and it was deep in these things, and they kind of roughly paint them. But these things were wood splinters, and we would get severe splinters all the time. Who remembers that? You would get the splinters, and because of the way these things were treated and the chemicals that were in them and the paints, and of course it was lead paints and stuff like that, any major splinter was guaranteed to get infected at some point. Now, the fact that this happened and we were able to manage to get around and work our way through all these things was amazing, because some of the toys we had were absolutely deadly, completely dangerous, not be allowed today. In fact, a lot of it would probably be illegal today. Like imagine candied cigarettes and the slingshot and everything else. I mean, you'd send your kid out with a slingshot and a pack of candied cigarettes, and you'd probably wind up within an hour, the police and CPS at your door, trying to take your kid away, wanting to arrest you, calling you neglectful, and all you're doing is letting them just have an adventure. As I can say that I am proud. Now, I'm going to say it here. I'm a survivor. That's right. We're all survivors. Gen X kids, we're survivors. We survived toys and candies that were designed to injure, maim, and possibly direct us to something that would kill you down the road. And yet we are all still here. So shout out to all my fellow Gen Xers. This is Drac saying bye-bye for now, and I'll talk to you later. Peace.